The man who held her hand was an unknown to her family, yet she passed away with them at her side. There was a deafening stillness as the truth swept through the room. Her letter was an unexpected surprise. The echoing chamber of the medical facility remained unchanged. Soft hums of machinery accompanied the gentle gliding of sunshine across the linoleum floor as it filtered through the partially closed curtains. Bouquets of flowers brought by friends, neighbors, and co-workers adorned the windowsill. As if attempting to bury the smell of death, they scented the entire room. A weary guy with gentle eyes sat at Amelia Hart's bedside. Michael had his fingers intertwined with hers, and he was slowly running his thumb down the back of her hand. Though his face betrayed no sign of discomfort, he appeared as though he had not slept in days. Resolute, unwavering loyalty. He maintained his gaze fixed on the person directly in front of him. Even when Amelia Hart's mother avoided looking at him and her brother coughed awkwardly at the door, he remained unfazed. Remaining motionless, he spoke softly to the way. His beloved stopped responding, at least not anymore. However, that was insufficient to impede his speech, even in their incomprehension, and particularly at that moment. "You were courageous," he whispered. The members of Amelia Hart's family sat rigidly in the chairs that the Ava Mitchells had brought in from across the room. Vivian Hart, her mother, sported a tightly curled hairdo that hadn't been styled since the 1980s, and a necklace of pearls. Her pale yet unreadable face complemented her flawless posture. Glancing at the man by her daughter's side was the sole instance in which she displayed emotion. After then she glanced, and her lips parted, far away. Standing with his arms crossed, her father watched the passing cars in the parking lot, as if they were going to whisk him away from this very moment. Nodding courteously at Michael and Ava, Mitchell came in and examined the intravenous line. "At any time, Mr. Ellis, you can inform us of your needs," the brow furrowed of Amelia Hart's mother. "Ellis," she murmured to herself. Michael once again failed to respond after catching it. Caressing a strand of hair off Amelia Hart's forehead, he could feel his wedding band sparkling gently. He wore it non-stop ever since they said their vows in a solemn courtroom 7 years ago. Even though nobody paid any attention to it, she wore hers as well. However, the light captured it perfectly. Today, seeing this, Amelia Hart's mom scowled. She furrowed her brows and gripped her purse even more tightly. Everyone remained silent. Despite her repeated refusals to visit, they had never once inquired as to where Amelia Hart usually spent her holidays. Nobody ever questioned her companions on the trip or the source of her homecoming shine. It was also never presented by Amelia Hart. She was wiser. Despite Michael's long period of invisibility, he finally appeared in her dying hours exactly where she had envisioned him, being seen standing by her side, no longer concealed, regardless of whether they could still not perceive him or ever would. He drew forward his forehead, meeting hers softly. He whispered that you didn't have to ask for their permission and that you didn't need it. Something in the room changed as the cardiac monitor beeped continuously. A knot formed. One of the cousins coughed. Someone looked at the time. No matter how many people sat in that room, Michael didn't care because they all didn't know the way Amelia Hart smiled in the morning. They hadn't been there for her when her diagnosis was at its worst. When the lights went out, they all huddled around candles to make themselves feel closer, but no one could hear her giggle. Unlike him, none of them knew her. Even if her family continued to turn a blind eye, he remained silent and present. The dreary soundtrack of the machines accompanied Michael as he sat silently beside Amelia, Hart's bedside, reliving memories he had not asked for. However, that was inevitable. Nonetheless, a corner of a picture frame protruded from the weathered leather bag that lay beneath her hospital bed, and his gaze lingered on it. A split second in time was hardly discernible through the pane of glass. As the waves crashing behind them, Amelia Hart laughed and rested her head on his shoulder, touched by the sun. On their anniversary trip to Myrtle Beach, the one location she could relax and enjoy herself, although concealment had been their constant companionship from the start. He reminisced about the day. They said, "I do it." Neither had it been in a stately hall with many relatives in attendance. There was complete silence in the county courthouse as they stood, hand in hand. Wearing a delicate blue gown, Amelia Hart flashed a nervous smile. Michael donned his finest suit, which he had custom-made for an interview many years ago. Two trusted pals were the only ones who could attest to the uniqueness and authenticity of their love. No images were shared on the internet, notifications were not sent. Michael was aware of Amelia Hart's true feelings, but she refused to face the cacophony. He recalled how every time she paid her parents a visit, she discreetly put her ring into her purse. She was very good at making up reasons to be busy on holidays. What she would say if circumstances were better next year. It was love, not weakness, that led him to accept it. Michael put her favorite soup recipe in the pot on Christmas Eve before she went to have supper with her family. It wasn't the proper time, she said, returning home hours later with smudged makeup and red eyes. Regardless, he hugged her and kissed her forehead. "Do you ever wish we were simply easy for them?" he whispered into her ear while they were alone in their flat. Amelia Hart muttered to him, "They wouldn't understand." As her eyes welled up with tears, "I'm here to keep you safe." A piece of him cracked beneath his smile and nod. Once again he found himself in the midst of whispers in the hospital room. She mumbled, "Poor thing," as Amelia Hart's aunt stooped over her cousin. "It seems like he's merely a trusting friend." To Michael's ears it sounded obviously he did. Every time he heard it, he remained silent, though he never made any changes. He had come to understand that their approbation was unnecessary for his love. He didn't require their approval to express his anguish. Regardless, it was painful. He delicately removed the frame from her bag, running his fingers across the glass in the process. Her grin was incredibly liberating. Inversion had secretly lived her life as the version of herself that no one in this room had ever seen. After a long day, she would whisper into his chest and say, "I hate that I can't share you with them, but I will one day." He remembered the feeling. Her unfaltering devotion had convinced him to believe her despite her fears. Holding her hand as promised, as her husband, he stood before a room full of people who knew only a fraction of her life, but he had known everything. And that was enough. It resided in her subtle movements, in the way she kissed him twice before he left for work, and in the fact that she saved her best stories for him. The only sound that penetrated the clinically clean room was the steady beeping of the many monitoring devices. As they remained in the same position as the day they first drifted off to sleep, Amelia Hart's breath had become shallow, and her grip on Michael's hand was loose. Michael hadn't moved much all morning when they were on the couch together, years ago, after binge-watching a show they never finished. He was starving, he was exhausted. The only person to whom he had ever felt calm, rather than loneliness in this stillness, was the one he had clung to physically and emotionally. Upon opening the door, made a squeaky sound. Entering the room with a commanding presence, Amelia Hart's mother wore pearls around her neck, like armor, and stamped her authority onto the tile floor. Despite her pale complexion, her eyes were piercing and merciless. Keeping a Bible and muttering something about blessings, a young Father Donnelly trailed behind her in a submissive manner. Michael went unnoticed by Vivian Hart. Without stopping, she made her way to the side of the bed and faced Father Donnelly. A last prayer would be desired by her, she pleaded with him, quickly then cast a critical look at Michael. He need not wait inside. No one budged from Michael. He could have skipped it. Her voice grew more forceful as Vivian Hart advanced toward her. "The whole family is here today." A gentle yet insistent voice broke through the doorway just as Michael was about to respond. It was her wish that he be present according to Ava Mitchell. She wore an S badge Rios RN. Vivian Hart was irritated since he was more than simply a guest. Nobody considers him family. He was a As soon as Ava Mitchell entered the room, she halted the rite by placing a delicate hand on Father Donnelly's arm. From a legal standpoint, he is in her health records and advance directive. He is named as her spouse. Michael declined to comment. A little crumpled folder was removed from his coat pocket by him. There was a little curl on the border of the beige paper. Gently, he lifted it and angled it so that it faced the light. Just over the printed text sat Amelia Hart's tidy and recognizable signature. Michael Joseph Carter, spouse, is the next of kin. In utter perplexion, Father Donnelly blinked. Ava Mitchell nodded with an air of knowing. The mother of Amelia Hart stood still, staring at the paper. She parted her lips but said nothing. As if that weren't distracting enough, her gaze briefly drew to Amelia Hart's wedding band, which she had fought the want to ignore. Michael refrained from bragging all morning. He remained silent. She chose me. Even though she was unable to express it, she still selected me. He kept quiet. He merely tucked the directive away after folding it. After that, he returned his attention to Amelia Hart and delicately brushed a fly hair off her forehead, clarifying his throat. Father Donnelly spoke. "Would you be interested in participating in the blessing as well?" He turned to Michael and inquired, this time with a more direct tone. One nod from Michael. Grace was her belief. He whispered, "We should give it to her," with her arms crossed and a look of bewilderment and discomfort on her face. Vivian Hart remained motionless at the foot of the bed as Father Donnelly started to pray. Still, Michael had gone back to what really mattered, holding her hand. He wasn't hidden or invisible in that time, amidst repressed grief and judgment. In love, truth, and as Amelia Hart's husband and family, he was precisely who she had written him to be. The funeral concluded beneath a misty afternoon sky, the type that encapsulates quiet in every crevice. Under the shade of the oak trees, Amelia Hart's relatives stood rigidly in a row, their chattering incoherent and uninteresting. The ceremony and the flowers were both lovely. Michael was completely ignored. Just as he had done throughout his life, he had stood alone, not intentionally. Sophie Hart. Amelia's younger sister walked through the study later that day, amidst the peace and quiet of their childhood home. Picture frames and long-lost books were covered with dust. Nothing in particular was on her mind. She simply wanted to feel her sister's presence again. Among all the rooms in the house, Amelia Hart had always felt the most at home in this one. As soon as Sophie Hart unlocked the desk's bottom drawer, she noticed the little cream-colored envelope perched on top of a weathered blue diary. The message was neatly written and addressed to my family, asking them to read it after my passing. Her heart raced. After a moment of hesitation, she brought the letter into the living room, where their parents remained seated. Vivian Hart sat on the edge of the couch, her jaw clenched, and their father nursed a half-cup of iced tea. "Tell me what I'm looking at," Vivian Hart inquired. With barely a whisper, Sophie Hart sank into her seat. "We received a letter from Amelia Hart." As Sophie Hart shattered the seal, silence fell as she started to read aloud. Her hands quivered. "By the time you hold this, I will have already departed. There are things I couldn't say while living. And now that I'm dead, I feel no choice but to write them down." Honestly, you had no acquaintance with Michael. This, however, I did. He was completely familiar to me. When I was scared, he helped me feel more secure. He listened attentively without passing judgment. The world told us we were wrong, but he made me feel protected. You believed I was ashamed to keep him away from you the whole time. It is not accurate. To shield him from your criticism, your hushed insults, and the courteous smiles that fell flat on your icy face, I held him at arm's length. No disrespectful treatment of the man I loved would ever enter my mind. An unsteady tone came from Sophie Hart. Looking down, their father stood across from her. A line of pressure formed between Vivian Hart's lips. That was a year ago. Sophie Hart continued that I got my diagnosis. I knew what would happen if I told any of you, so I kept it a secret. Accompany dramatic events, exert control, and seek out chilly solace. I decided to take a different path instead, remarried in the small chapel by the lake. Michael and I were joined in matrimony once more. During the vows, hubby sobbed, and I sported a white dress. I had no idea that would be one of my final days yet. It turned out to be the happiest. He was like family to me, even if you might not have thought so. Ultimately, my one and only true family. Okay, I get it. If you think he was a mistake, then so be it. Just so you know, my last request was to have his hand held while I slipped away from this world. Even though he knew what he would face without me, he still gave me that, "You need to put your pride aside, I'm sorry, but it's never too late for you. Kind regards, Amelia Hart." A veil of silence hung over the room. A word escaped Vivian Hart's lips as she blinked and gently parted her lips. After delicately folding the letter with her fingers, Sophie Hart set it back on the table. Silence engulfed her. She was unnecessary to. Even though their father's spectacles were clean, he nevertheless reached for them and wiped them. No one had seen him cry in years until that moment. Soft and distant like time, releasing something it had held on to too firmly. The grandfather clock chimed once in the corridor. On the upper floor, next to a dusty photo album, rested the blue journal. As Michael sat in their cramped living room, he could smell her favorite lotion on a scarf she once wore and imagine her surrounded by empty teacups. He had no need to know that the letter had been read. He was unaware he had experienced it all before. He had owned her every instant, every word. Just as the sun was about to set, it cast a gentle golden glow over the little cemetery. In the soft wind, the branches of the trees murmured to one another, as if the earth could still hear the tales told by the ancestors who had long since passed on. With a delicate arrangement of white peonies held in his hand, Michael leisurely strolled along the gravel road. He took his time. When she was involved, he never did. Underneath an ancient elm tree was Amelia Hart's headstone, which was as plain and graceful as her wishes. No ornate monuments, no lyrical memorials. Little delicate calligraphy beneath her name and life years etched a line. "Much loved time." And again I came back. Michael bowed down next to it. From the base of the stone he gently wiped away a handful of fallen leaves with his fingertips. Sitting back on his heels, he allowed the quiet to envelop him as he delicately placed the peonies on the table. Nobody else had shown up for the day. Well, he wasn't expecting that, so it was fine with him. Breathing slowly, he exhaled. Speaking softly, he almost had the wind carry his words. "Now that I've worked up the nerve, I'm going to the beach." With moist yet parched eyes, he cracked a small smile. You can still see your name etched into the corner of the bench. I thought of how you laughed when I originally warned you that the water was too chilly, but you still dove in nevertheless, and I sat on it for a bit. With a pause, he dipped his head. He muttered that they didn't have to be familiar with me. "Did you? That was plenty." His coat was ruffled by the modest increase in wind speed. She had insisted on having a little photo printed, so he dug into his pocket and pulled out one. It was one of the few they had taken together. There they are laughing mid-shot her, with a straw hat, him trying to avoid the sun. He set it down next to the flowers and used a smooth stone to press it down. A car door softly shut behind him. Michael was oblivious to the fact that a young Ava Mitchell was sneaking back from her own visit to a grandparent's plot as she left the hospital. She halted as she beheld him, a towering black man, genuflecting solitary, his expression betraying something more profound than mere grief, a softer one. With her palm on her breast, she observed his relaxed shoulders and the tangible sense of presence that emanated from his quiet. And then something changed. Clasping her phone, she made the call. "Hey, Dad." "Shh," she whispered. "Oh, please don't worry. I simply wanted to express my love for you." Getting to his feet, Michael wiped the dirt from his knees and gazed upwards into the sky. As if by magic, the sun had finally peeked through the woods and illuminated Amelia Hart's tombstone. He nodded slightly, like if someone were standing right next to him. Following that, he pivoted and proceeded to return to the gravel path. His strides were slow and steady, and they echoed softly on the stones, conveying both sorrow and tranquility. Love can be expressed without a witness at times. A suit isn't necessary for its approval. It blossoms without asking for or receiving permission. All it needs is the truth. Love remains present even when all eyes are closed. The burial of Amelia Hart is in a state of serene dignity beneath a broad canopy of summer foliage. Whispers of remembrance pass softly through the air when the wind brushes across her tombstone. Perched on the grass next to it is a solitary wedding photograph, its edges yellowed but its center vivid. Michael and Amelia Hart, happy and holding one another's arms, extending so far that their laughter could be audible in the picture. At the ideal moment, the sun's rays illuminate the subject. A gentle golden light dances across it as if the cosmos were acknowledging what it had seen without interfering. As if singing a lullaby, the wind twirls the trees and rustles their leaves. There will no longer be any secrets. Disgrace is over, love, alone, gentle, patient, unrepentant, imprinted in stone and memory.